When most people think about muscle, they think about lifting a dumbbell, lifting groceries, lifting a heavy box. But here's something that completely changed the way I looked at exercise. Muscles don't just create movement, force production. They also control movement, force absorption, stability, and direction. And in many situations, that control is actually more important than the movement itself. In fact, many injuries don't happen because someone couldn't create enough force. They happen because they couldn't control or absorb the force they created. For example, think about a basketball player landing from a jump. They may be strong enough to jump high, but if they can't properly control the landing, their knee collapses inward and the force gets absorbed the wrong way, often leading to injuries like an ACL tear. The same thing happens in everyday life too, like stepping off a curb or landing awkwardly from a small jump and rolling an ankle. Today, I'm going to show you 4 basic muscle actions and why they matter for your workouts, your exercise programming, and even your risk of injury. Once you understand them, you'll know how to choose exercises more intelligently, balance your training, and begin seeing every workout a little differently. Hello, everyone. I'm Ed Slonsky, the old personal trainer. Last week, we talked about the 3 planes of movement: forward and backward, sagittal plane, side to side, frontal plane, and rotation, which is the transverse plane. Today, we're answering the next logical question. If those are the directions your body moves, what actually creates and controls those movements? The answer is, as you already know, muscle. Let's start with the easiest one, a concentric muscle action. This is the part everyone recognizes. It's when a muscle shortens while creating force. The easiest example is a bicep curl. As the dumbbell moves upward, your bicep muscles shorten. Standing up from a squat, pulling yourself up during a pull-up, pressing a weight overhead, those are all concentric actions. This is what most people think muscles do, but they're only telling half the story. Now, here's what most people never think about. Your body doesn't just perform concentric actions. It adapts to them. When you consistently train concentric movements, your muscles respond in a few key ways. First, they can increase strength, meaning you can produce more force as you lift. Second, they can improve muscle size or hypertrophy, especially when the load is challenging and the effort is close to fatigue. And third, they can improve power, which is your ability to apply that force quickly, like standing up fast from a squat or driving a weight overhead. But there's another important piece. Concentric training alone doesn't fully prepare your body for real life. Because life doesn't just ask you to lift things, it asks you to control them, slow them down, and stabilize under the load. And that's where the other muscle actions come in. Now, let's lower that dumbbell very slowly. Notice something? Your biceps are still working. They're just working differently. Instead of shortening, they're lengthening while controlling the weight. That's called an eccentric muscle action. And here's where things get really interesting. Because eccentric training is actually one of the most powerful ways your body adapts. When you emphasize this lowering phase in your workouts, your muscles respond in a very specific way. First, they get stronger faster. Eccentric contractions create more tension in the muscle fibers than lifting does. That high tension signals your body to reinforce that tissue. So over time, you build real usable strength, not just the ability to lift, but the ability to resist force. Second, you build muscular size more efficiently. A lot of muscle growth, what we call hypertrophy, happens during the lowering phase of a movement. That controlled lengthening creates microscopic stress in the muscle fibers, and your body repairs them by making them thicker and more resilient. Third, you improve muscular endurance in real life situations, because life is rarely about just lifting things. It's about controlling them over time. Walking downhill, carrying groceries, lowering yourself into a chair at the end of a long day. If your eccentric strength is poor, you fatigue faster and lose control sooner. And finally, you reduce injury risk when it's trained properly. Because most injuries don't happen when you're lifting. They actually happen when you're trying to slow something down and your body can't handle the load. Now, here's the important part. Eccentric training is not just about going slow for the sake of it. It's about intentional control. A controlled lowering phase teaches your muscles, tendons, and nervous system how to absorb force safely. And that skill carries over into everything you do. Personally, I think this is one of the most overlooked muscle actions in fitness because life is full of slowing things down. Walking downhill, walking downstairs, landing from a jump, stopping quickly on a pickleball court, decelerating during tennis, even sitting down into a chair. In these instances, your muscles aren't just trying to slow movement down. They're trying to control the pace of slowing down. And that's where many people get into trouble because muscles that are strong enough to lift something aren't always strong enough to control it. The third muscle action is called isometric. This one surprises people because nothing appears to be moving. Think about holding a plank, holding a push-up halfway down, standing on one leg. Your muscles are creating force, but the joints aren't moving. They're stabilizing. They're preventing movement. And here's something most people don't realize. Even though nothing is moving on the outside, a lot is happening inside the muscle. Your muscle fibers are still contracting. Your nervous system is still firing signals, and your body is actively recruiting muscles to hold position under load. Isometric strength becomes incredibly important for posture, balance, core stability, and protecting your joints. But it also has another major advantage. It teaches your body how to produce force safely in vulnerable positions. That means better joint control during real-life movement, like catching yourself when you slip, stabilizing your knee when you land, or holding your spine steady when you're lifting something awkward. Isometric training is one of the safest ways to build strength when someone is recovering from pain or returning from injury, because it allows the muscles to work hard without excessive joint motion. And interestingly, isometric holds can create very high levels of muscle activation, even though the movement is minimal. So sometimes the best thing your muscles can do is to stop moving. And in doing so, teaches your body how to control it better when it matters most. The fourth action is explosive movement, sometimes called ballistic movement. Think about jumping, throwing a medicine ball, a kettlebell swing, or sprinting. Now here's something most people don't realize. Even in ballistic training, all three muscle actions are happening at the same time. When you jump, for example, your muscles concentrically contract to drive you off the ground. They immediately switch to eccentric action when you land and absorb the force. And in between, your core and stabilizers are working isometrically to keep your body aligned in the air and during impact. So ballistic training isn't a separate category of muscle action. It's actually a rapid combination of all three working together under speed. That's what makes it so powerful. Because now you're not just training strength, you're training how your body transitions between strength, control, and stability in real time. That's where real-world performance lives. Now, why is ballistic training so valuable? Ballistic movements teach your nervous system to produce force quickly, power, coordinate multiple joints at once, integration, stabilize under speed, control, and react instead of just to perform slowly, planned movements. This is why athletes rely on it. And it's also why everyday life benefits from it. Because life doesn't ask you to move slowly and perfectly. It asks you to catch yourself when you trip, react when you slip, jump out of the way, accelerate quickly when needed. Ballistic training prepares you for those moments. But here's the caution. Power should be earned, not assumed, because ballistic training magnifies whatever you already have. If you have good control, it makes you more athletic. If you have poor control, it exposes it quickly and sometimes painfully. That's why jumping into explosive training too early can lead to joint irritation, poor landing mechanics, low back strain, shoulder or knee overload. Not because ballistic training is bad, but because it's demanding honesty from your body. Now, how do you know you're ready? Before adding ballistic work, you should be able to perform slow, controlled squats and lunges with good alignment, hold stable positions, planks, single leg balance without shaking or collapsing, control the lowering phase of movements, eccentric strength, move without pain through basic ranges of motion. If you can do those things consistently, then your body is starting to show it can handle speed. That's your green light. The big idea here is that ballistic training isn't just about being explosive. It's about being strong enough to produce force, controlled enough to absorb force, and stable enough to stay aligned under speed. When those three qualities come together, that's when true athletic movement appears. And that's when training stops being just exercise. It starts becoming performance. Now, I have to talk about another form of muscle action. Here's a quick word about isokinetics. You may also have heard the term isokinetic. This usually refers to specialized machines used in sports medicine, rehabilitation centers, and research. Those machines control the speed of movement while measuring the force your muscles produce. They're excellent assessment tools, but most people won't encounter them in a regular gym. So for everyday fitness, the 4 actions we've talked about today are the ones you'll experience most often. Okay, so why does any of this matter? Let's make this very practical. Because different exercise programs emphasize different muscle actions. Yoga includes a lot of isometric control, holding positions, and building stability. Traditional strength training emphasizes concentric and eccentric work, lifting and lowering weight. Plyometric or ballistic training emphasizes explosive movement, jumping, sprinting, and quick power. And most sports combine all 4 in different ways. So here's what this means for you. If you understand these 4 actions, you can finally answer 3 important questions. 1, how does this help me? It helps you understand what you're actually training. Instead of just doing a workout, you start to see whether you're building strength, control, balance, or power, and why that matters for everyday life, like walking stairs, carrying groceries, or preventing injury. Number 2, what is safe for me right now? Safety comes from matching the exercise of your current ability. If you're just starting out, isometric work like planks or supported holds and slow controlled movements are usually the safest place to begin. If you're more advanced, you can gradually add more load, speed, or complexity, but only after you can control the movements first. And 3, how do I progress from here? Now, progress isn't random. It follows a pattern. You start with control, isometric, then move to slow strength, concentric, and eccentric, and only then introduce speed and power, explosive work. In other words, control first, strength second, power last. The goal isn't to find one type of training that's better than the others. The goal is to understand what each one develops and where you are in that progression. Because once you understand that, you stop choosing workouts based only on what looks exciting. You start choosing workouts based on what your body is actually ready for and what it needs next. So here's your homework. The next time you're working out, pick one exercise and ask yourself, am I lifting? Am I lowering? Am I holding? Or am I exploding? And as you think about that, I want you to go back to what we covered in the last episode on the 3 ways the body moves: forward and backward, side to side, and rotation. Because now you're starting to see how these ideas connect. Those movement directions tell you where your body's moving, and today's muscle actions tells you how your body's controlling that movement. You'll probably discover that every repetition includes more than one muscle action. And once you begin noticing that, you'll never look at exercise the same way again. In our next episode, we're going to answer another important question. Once muscles create movement, how do they actually change? Why do some workouts build strength, others build endurance, and others build power? That's where we'll explore muscle adaptation. And it's one of the biggest reasons people accidentally train against their goals instead of toward them. If you'd like to get a head start, my fitness baseline GPT is linked in the description below. Click on it. It will help you identify your current strengths, movement limitations, flexibility, cardiovascular capacity, and exercise readiness before choosing a training program. And if you have any questions about beginning an exercise program, feel free to leave me a comment or send me an email. I'm always happy to help. My name is Ed Slonsky, the old personal trainer, and I'll see you in the next video.